And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Better late than never. As we are here to bring you episode 6 review recap of the FX on Hulu show Class of '09. This one is called Hogan's Alley. And it's your guy here, Lucas, with Sam Supercell 0320. I'm gonna say it eventually like an anime where they say 020. What's going on this evening, sir?
What's going on? I'm just proud that you called it an anime and not something else. So yeah, that
No,
works.
no. I know, but we're not getting canceled here. But again, we're here to bring you our review recap of episode 6 of Class of '09. I know we're a little late, but hey, life happens and film festivals happen and big movies happen. There's things of this nature that slowed us down this week. But quickly, let's jump into this episode as we start episode 6 off with the recruits training for a bank robbery and how to cope with things. What did you think about just the way this episode begins here with the recruits as they're training about this bank robbery on this Hogan's Alley that's set up by the FBI and basically teach them how to cope with things that go wrong or could go wrong in these situations?
I think it's just fascinating playing to each one of their strengths, like Teo's rational side of things, Poet's perspective on how the best person to go in to do what. Like
Hmm.
I loved how it played to all their strengths, and it shows how strong of a unit they are. And also, like I think that Gabriel and I forget the other.
Drew.
Uh, yeah, they know full well what kind of recruits they have. It's just they kind of
Hmm.
buttered it up, and I love how the
Yeah.
outcome was like, yeah, we talk about that and hype people up to make sure that they don't see the inconsistency of what's going on. But I did find it was weird because I was like, man, what is going on with this procedure? I was like, something is off. It doesn't make any sense. And
Hmm.
the way they kind of played it out, I thought that was really dope. I just really liked that.
Yeah, especially the way just showing them that everything could go wrong. Especially first time when we see them attempt to breach the bank
Yep.
and everybody comes out everywhere and Poet is so distracted and she says, wait a minute, this is like, who's this person, why are they grabbing me? And they say, we hire trained actors
Yep.
to do this, and their job is to surprise you. Like, you got to understand, like, in this type of situation anything humanly possible can happen, and that's necessary because it trains them on being prepared for things that you can't prepare for,
Right.
things you can't predict is gonna happen here. And for someone like Poet, I love the point that they showed her being surprised
Mhm.
because in the future and the present, we see she's kind of prepared for almost everything humanly possible.
Pretty
But
much.
here, early on, she gets thrown off, and this is part of her training. Let her know, like, these impossible things can happen, and don't just think everything is going to be straightforward when these type of situations occur. But
Yeah.
next up, we get the pastor in the hospital as we left from episode 5 with the system is what I'm calling it at this point, or I'm trying not to call it Skynet.
Trying that.
I'm going to call it the system at this point ends up attacking the church and attacking the pastor. But here is where the team, and this is Poet, Honor, Lennox, Murphy, who believe the system is controlling everything and doing it on its own. We talked about this already. We
Yep.
talked about everything and the way they're setting this up. What do you think about in this scene about them finally coming to the realization that it's not Teo possibly controlling the system, it's the system actually doing this?
Yeah, I think that them kind of like trying to piece together the in betweens of what this really means, I think was a very
Hmm.
fascinating conversation. I think that the thing that was scaring me about their conversation was, you know, they're looking at this like they can't be attacked at any given time or place. I was
Hmm.
like, y'all are talking around like infiltrating like a system that's designed for self-preservation. And I was like, somebody gonna get killed. That's
Yeah.
where my head was going the whole entire time. I was like, somebody ain't gonna make it till tomorrow. Because if they attacked a pastor in the church, and got away with it without any issue, even with the director saying to them, like, look,
Mm-hmm.
how did this happen? Then you guys got to figure out a better way of this. And I think that Poet
Yeah.
knew, they got to be kind of careful with it. But at the same time, she doesn't stop. She doesn't know how to stop
Yep.
herself or anybody else. Like, she always
Mm-hmm.
pushes too far, always.
And speaking of that, next up is when Teo meets with his team. And this is a very interesting conversation. He meets with them to find out what's going wrong and why the system would even attack a church.
Mhm.
And one of the members of his team says, "What makes you think the system was wrong?" I think what's interesting here is the thought process of this team here.
Yeah.
Them saying the system's never been wrong. At this point, we see them completely feeding in and believing no matter what, the system is correct here.
Yep.
And them asking Teo, "What do you want us to do about this? What do you think about this short conversation between them and showing one, this is the first glimmer that Teo doesn't believe the system is good anymore.
Yeah.
Two, that the people on his team, because most of them, I want to say, have come into the FBI with the system already in place.
Yep.
So they fully trust everything the system does. We
Yeah.
just didn't think about this conversation between Teo and his team about the system and about how something like this can happen and about how none of them question anything the system did.
Yeah, it's for them, it's like the ends justify the means. Like, they're kind of like in their mindset, like, there's no crime, nobody's dying in the streets. And, if that means, the system being extra careful, going into a church and doing that, well, maybe it had the right assessment. Like, they're
Mm-hmm.
looking at it from a numbers game, and then also looking at it for convenience. Like, if they don't have
Yep.
to get their hands dirty or their hearts possibly, looking at this, is this like the right thing? Like, where are your morals with this? As a person
Mm-hmm.
that upholds the law, at the point that you're saying screw the law, I'm just going to trust this, and that's where his point of contention was, like, at the point that you're even thinking about this, we've already lost because you're conditioned and almost seduced by the system that's kind of had you, I don't know, spoiled essentially. Like,
Yes.
there
Mm-hmm.
is no crime, there is no issue. Technically, the system's doing the job for them. And so
Yep.
if it has to be a situation where they have to make that decision, they don't want to. And I think about it like, if say, hypothetically speaking, in the next 10 years, we, kind of like the show, we can't drive the cars anymore. The cars drive us. But you can choose if you want to go back and forth, but there are limitations there. Like, say, like, oh, okay, something might come up, you might get like a flag because you're not letting the system do this. Like, eventually people start getting conditioned to, like, you know what, I don't even want to bother anymore. Like, automation is a thing that we're all dealing with, but when it
Mm-hmm.
starts to become like the law, like, I think that's where it gets really scary. Like,
Mm-hmm.
their
I
conversation
mean,
is probably the most scariest thing in this show so far.
yes. I mean, if we think about it, how many people remember phone numbers anymore? Remember when you had to do that?
I do, only because, I grew up in a small town, so like we all had phone books and stuff like that. So I remembered everybody's number, and I still do. But now, when you got like, what, 100 contacts, it's impossible. It
Hey,
literally is impossible at this point.
I got a phone book the other day and questioned who would drop this piece of unnecessary thing off to me. Like who's dropping a phone book off in 2023? And I got one at my front door. I'm like, wait a minute, this is so unnecessary. Why am I getting a phone book in 2023? But again, it shows the way things go and what we accept. And
Yeah.
that's what this shows so far. It's one of the few positives from this show so far is you accepting things and then no longer questioning anything that happens to these
Right.
things you accept. Next up is, and this is not much to talk about except for you kind of know what this was leading to. And this is Poet and a team saying we need the footage from the church to show the world so we can show the system is corrupt. And here is when Murphy volunteers to get the footage from the church. All of them say every cliche line in every sci-fi movie ever, which is, this is going to be dangerous. You shouldn't do this. Him, I could get in and out before anybody sees it. Not understanding it's a damn system that can't be tricked here.
Right. Like,
I'm not gonna actually comment on this because it's self-explanatory. At this point, we knew Murphy was gonna die. It was obvious at that point he was gonna die. Because again, this is just too telegraphed for that not to be the case.
yeah.
What I am gonna ask you is what happens up next, which is Poet and Honor. This is in the past. They go back to the past and they talk about Lennox. And this is just a quick conversation about Poet's relationship with Lennox and what she's willing to accept here. This is a quick conversation that leads us going to the present, where we get Honor talking to Poet after her marriage is over.
Look,
What I'm going to ask you here quick, because I'm going to blend the three different key storylines here between the first one of the past with them talking about it, and then the first part of the present of them talking about it, and then the last part of the present of Honor admitting to Poet that she's in love with her.
Yeah.
We kind of saw this coming. It's kind of foreshadowed very heavily in this show.
Yeah.
What did you think about this being revealed this way?
I think the show has telegraphed ours true what's the word? Insecurity. The one true insecurity she has, because they've kind of made it be like, oh, okay, the parents were, scared of, how she would look being on FBI, but like, no, that her real fear is like she used the FBI as a gateway to asking the real question, that she's afraid of their perception of her and everybody else around her. And from jump, like first episode, we saw like she wanted to quit, and she found Poet that was not willing to let her quit. She needed her. She straight up told her, I need you. And so, I think we saw like in episode 3, like one of the flashbacks or flash forwards, can't really remember, is like, like Hour said, look, I told you the truth, and just like normal, you threw it away, you got scared, and then you gave away my such and such state. So they already revealed that, which sucked.
Yeah.
And I think with this is so weird to me, because I knew for a fact, like, well, I don't know if Poet realized it. Poet is playing both Hour and Lennox. Like, she's playing both people. She's pulling emotions out of Hour and reciprocating them, but then putting Lennox through all this, like, oh, I don't want to compromise my career, I don't want to compromise yours, because she's scared. And she really is in love with both of these people, and she's playing these games that's so annoying, that's unnecessary. So by the time that this scene right here comes up, and Hour straight up tell him, like, we both said it. Like, I was like, this relationship, this person she married, it don't seem like a legitimate. It seems like it's there superficially. It just is there to make sure it doesn't look like she's doing anything outside the norm. And so I was like, when she said she was no longer with us, I was like, yeah, I knew that was coming. But this scene right here really pissed me off, because the fact is, she said her straight up, like, look, I have feelings for you. And instead of Poet kind of like gently doing like that, she leans in to kiss her and was like, I'm sorry. I'm like,
yeah.
What does that mean? Like, you're gonna sit there and lean in, like you're reciprocating that emotion. You're showing that, I kind of need you, but I'm not gonna compromise my career or compromise this other thing I got going on. So I think it does a disservice to their relationship, and I guess we'll talk about it more in the next episode, because I failed to realize what's the point of Hour and Poet's relationship, because they keep going back and forth with Poet paying with them, and it makes both relationships lessened or valued in any way, shape, or form. Because at this point, I was kind of like, I'm pulling more for Poet than Hour, and I could care less about Lennox. And I'm like, Lennox, like, you've been through several different marriages, like, you dealing with this crazy girl, like, drop it, dude. But anyway, I'm gonna digress. I'll digress.
And then next up, which is part of their conversation, is, and this is just to put it out there, because this plays dividends in the next episode a lot. But in this episode, they bring up Honor telling Poet, like, hey, how about you allow me to use the system to help with your case. And this is the case that Poet takes on about the killer, who we don't see much about. But this is early on when she also brings up about letting the system help her with her case. But again, not much to talk about here because this is just hinting towards what's going to happen with the system and about her allowing her to make with the system. But next up, we have Teo meeting with Amos at his house.
Yep.
And he shows Teo the code and how the code is adapting to the environment. And he's explaining to him fully how this works. We've seen this scene in almost every sci-fi movie with a computer system that takes over. It's obvious what's happening here. What'd you think about the way they handled it here, especially the conversation between Amos and Teo, as he's not only explaining the system, but also explaining to him like, hey, this is how it's going to adapt to everything. This is what's going to happen if you feed it more information.
Yeah, it's just very fascinating, I guess, only because of Teo and how his mind works. I think if I didn't know, who Teo was internally and his fears and his biases, it wouldn't be as engaging of a conversation because, like, dude, he's giving you all the warning signs. Like, he's telling you what you need to know to make sure you don't do this. Like, he's the person that's creating and sculpting this. Ours already let you know the inconsistencies of what he's talking about. There's so many ways that this can go, but Teo can't let it go because internally he could never do that himself. So I think that the parts of the conversation about the system, how viable the system is, and then also like how the system, if he hadn't have had the system, his wife, other people probably would have already been dead by now. So in his mind, it goes back to what's going on in the future. The ends justifying the means, and he's compromising that now. We're in the present, technically.
Yeah, it's a lot going on, by the way they jump in the timeline. But again, it explains why everything is set up the way and why Teo thinks the way Teo does. And it's foreshadowed already when you go to the past of him being an early recruit, of him questioning everything. The best way to stop someone from questioning everything is to give them every answer humanly possible. And that's what he believes at this point the system could do. Even as he meets with the top brass and he pitches them the idea of using the system, and they again give him the same feedback of this will eliminate the need for agents if we do this. And I like the way this is set up because it shows one, everyone else feared what this system could do, but Teo. It's kind of odd because he feared what every person could do, but didn't fear what a system would do once you feed it full of information here. It was kind of weird the way that's set up, but again, that's one of the things they do really, really well here because it's a part of Teo being so naive to how grand AI is, especially, I mean, all we gotta do is look at the fight that certain people are going through now about AI and understanding like it's a fear that if you feed it all the way, what the heck could happen if you allow it to run wild? But here is Teo not fully grasping that and making plans and decisions to allow that to happen. But next up, the most important thing is a quick scene. And I'm only asking you this because it kind of gets a more foreshadowing to the person that Teo is. It's Teo's mother, and his wife. And it's his mother realizing something is wrong here. Teo saying they're fine, and then his wife tells the truth about everything. That one, they are not fine. That the issue is that Teo, as she puts it, you're the top Black person in the FBI. Why do you need more? And this is Teo telling her about his need to be great. What did you think about this entire scene? One, the mother sensing something was wrong and bringing it up. Two, Teo trying to deflect it, and then his wife letting everything go.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, how do I say this nicely? I've definitely been in situations like this with my family. Mom will say something like, "Hey, you all right, baby?" And like, "Yeah, I'm straight." And then wife would be like, "No, he ain't." And that's That's literally what happened. And it was kind of like it plays to what Teo's issue is, like his trauma. His trauma created like his perspective of how the world works. And like there's never gonna be enough security in his mind because he, instead of like allowing Phil to control him, like he's added a perspective on the way the world has to work, and he has to control that outcome. And his need to control is the reason why he continuously wants more power. But it's draining the life out of his marriage, it's draining the life out of, you know, himself. Like, and she kind of was like making some very good point. But for him, it was like, I can't stop. This can't stop. Like, if I don't stop, this is gonna get worse. Um, yeah, I felt bad for Teo, but at the same as that time, like I felt worse for the wife, honestly, because the wife is knowing that, you know, he's a good man and he's smart, he's a genius. But even when the scene before, when he was talking to, you know, the current director, and the current director was like giving him the go ahead, and he said something along the lines of like, yeah, I know the reason why you allow me to do this, because it's if and when it fails, it's gonna fall back on
You
me.
can
So
blame me for it. Yep.
and like that's just how human minds work. And I was like, he said that to his face. Like, and I was like, yeah, I think Teo might need some therapy for real, because his mind is, yeah, it's just fascinating. I think Brian Tyree is doing a really good job with this. I really enjoy his character.
Yeah. It's amazing the way it's set up that Teo is blunt with everybody humanly possible. But here at the beginning, he wasn't blunt with his mother or his wife.
Not at all.
He only became that way because she questioned why did he need to be great. But here, I think the biggest takeaway for me was the point that Teo's conversation here with his wife reminded me a lot of conversations you hear from athletes. They need to be great. Kobe Bryant literally was the first person that popped into my head, and Michael Jordan, both of them too. Because when you hear them talk about the pursuit of greatness, everyone else could be sacrificed for their pursuit of greatness. Because they said it felt like I couldn't live if I wasn't great. And that's almost word for word what Teo told his wife, which is, I have to do this. Meaning, again, he's already the top black man in the FBI at this point, and that still wasn't enough. Like, he knew I have to be more. And you only get that normally from athletes who feel like I have to be more, I have to be better. And at times with those athletes, the first thing that gets sacrificed is family. And his wife here let him know she wasn't willing to fully accept that. And I thought that was again, this show, and through all its flaws, the one flaw it does not have is David Tyree Henry. The way they have set this character up, and the depth that you get from Teo on this show, at times it feels like Teo character is on the wrong show.
Or it could just be on him. No other characters needed.
None needed. I would prefer to deal with an entire series of just him. I don't need anyone else here. And that is, everyone else's storyline feels like it lags compared to Teo's storyline. And I don't know if that's done purposely, but you got some other great actors on this show that just aren't measuring up, because I don't think their material is as interesting as Teo. But speaking of Teo, next up is Teo Amos Meet with Our. And this is a heck of a conversation here. She's upset because they've introduced AI to her database. She tells them the FBI set up all this stuff so one person wouldn't have any oversight, because we saw what that led to before. And she was referring to J. Edgar Hoover. When one person has oversight, we see what can happen. She's basically telling them allowing AI into the system is giving one person oversight over everything. Not knowing what we know from what happens after this point, what did you think about this conversation that they had in here? And our assertion that what makes this bad is that you're giving one person control over everything from an agency who has fought for over 30 years for that never to happen again.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was very fascinating watching Ramos. Like, he wasn't disagreeing with Our, he was just listening once he made his point.
Mhm.
And I think the person that was really trying to dispute it really was Teo. And
Yeah.
my headspace went, J. Edgar Hoover was a man, right? Like flesh and blood. And the whole entire conversation, she was like, someone. I was like, no. Like, this is worse because you can't just shut down an application. It can go anywhere, and it's all encompassing. Like, this could bleed over for forever because it's not
Yeah.
got like a clothespin. Like, it's not like,
Mhm.
okay, you got 70 years or 80 years or maybe 90 years. Like, no, like this could be for the next 300 years.
Mhm.
And why, as time goes on, when more people get used to that idea, like, why would they fight something that works? It wouldn't make sense. Like, if
Mm.
I know for a fact I need a cell phone to do my job,
Uh-huh.
or all thing I need is a cell phone to do my job day by day, why would I buy a computer? Why would I go and buy all these other things if I can do everything with the phone? So I think that the conversation was really fascinating because I think that Our was bringing awareness to it, but I don't think she realized the depths of how bad it was actually going to get
Yeah.
because it's not just one person, it's an entity that will never stop. And I think that Ramos, he talked around like how it would learn and be efficient, but he didn't talk around the idea of self-preservation. Any
Yeah.
human once learned, like, they're going to try to defend themselves. And so if this thing looks at you as a threat, it's going to try to defend itself. And Teo is too blind to see it because he's too smart not to. It's crazy.
That's the best way to put it.
It's
You're
crazy.
so smart, you're dumb, as the old folks would say. But next up, we go back to '09 with the recruits, and this is their final test on Hogan's Alley with the bank robbery here.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it's very interesting to see how everybody mind works
Yep.
because this is the big bank robbery. And as they're going through the file of the people who are supposed to hold the people hostage, the only person who pieces everything together is Poet.
Yep. Sure does.
Down to who should go in there and why you should go in there. What did you think about this whole scene, the whole setup, the interaction with Poet and her team about the things you need to pay attention to, the little things you need to pay attention to? First thing I thought of is Denzel Washington, little things. It's the little things, Jimmy.
Little things,
The
Jimmy.
little things
Little
you
things.
had to pay attention to here.
Yeah.
And how Teo handled it once he got inside.
Yeah. I think one thing about Poet, with all her faults, there's a lot of them, she understands humanity very well. She understands people like to a T. Like, she can read people so well, blend in with
Mhm.
people, but she also understands balance. Like, she's like, we can go in there charging, but there may be another angle. She always is looking for the other way out. And
Yeah.
Teo is always looking for, there is no way out and think like that. And so the way she kind of pieced it all together, and also even Teo relenting to her and realizing
Mhm.
that's one thing about their relationship. He's never discarded her. Like, he doesn't agree with her methods. And he thinks her methods are dangerous, but he's never looked at her as somebody that's like, nah, I would never want to be around you. Like, he
Yeah.
knew full well what she was saying, and they adapted. And it ended up really fascinating because he got in there, and Teo is a brave man. Like, he's afraid to get put down. Like, he knows how to handle a dangerous situation. He always has. Even
Mhm.
that first ranch episode, like, he went up in there. I was like, man, you going in there by yourself? You crazy? And so, like, that's just who he is. And she knows Teo, and she knows that this situation is not just what meets the eye. And Teo's going to piece together all the little parts
Mhm.
about what's going on. He's going to
Yep.
rationalize it, and he's going to assess it. And I think that that's what ended up happening because Teo kind of was like, look, I'm not here for this. Like, this dude needs medical attention. He'd given him the
Mhm.
facts. the reasoning, and then the why. And then sure enough, it paid off, which makes them a great team. It's just, yeah, I think it's foreshadowing. I really do. I don't know how the show is going to end, but I feel like it's foreshadowing. She knows people, and at this point, this AI is really working like a person, honestly.
Yeah.
What that means and how they're going to utilize Teo for that, I don't know, but yeah, I think it's all foreshadowing at this point.
There you go. And I'm going to combine the last 2 points of this episode. First, we're back to the future again. and and first up is a visit to the hospital between Teo and his mom. What's interesting here is the words his mom used for everything that Teo pursued, especially after we got early in the episode when a wife questioned, "What's your need to be great?" And Teo's answer here, the mom, when he says, "I changed the world for her, but I lost her," which is a very weird thing to say. You did everything for this person that they never asked you to do, but doing it cost you the person that you love the most. And then next up, we get Teo and his team as they arrive at the church. At the same time, the system is literally telling him someone else is in the building. And he finds Murphy has taken a hard drive, USB drive, which is odd in 2020, 2035 to still be using a USB drive. But he takes a USB drive to get the footage to show that the system went wild and attempted to kill the pastor. We know how this ends. Unless I was just the worst person humanly possible, I would clearly see that the system was going to take over his car, and it literally turned into like Total Recall, and not the good Total Recall. I'm talking about the one with Colin Farrell in like, was that like 2000 and was it 2013, 2014, one of them years, that horrible one with Colin Farrell, when the thing took over the car and we kind of saw the path it was going to go down to its inevitable end. What'd you think about these last two scenes? One, first, the conversation with Teo and his mom. Second, that Teo allowed Murphy to leave with that footage, and the system response to him having that footage.
Yeah, I think the conversation with the mom was really good because I think it humanized Teo in a way that we needed, as we haven't seen him outside of the last episode, the end of the last episode, have like an emotional reaction. Like he's kind of just been like a robot himself. And like you see him being emotionally compromised because he's basically kind of like Poet, like giving his life to this result. And now he's seeing the result that he's created has cost him everything already. He was okay with that up until he realized that it was for nothing because it's doing the opposite of what he's always wanted. And I mean, it's something about hearing from your mom that kind of brings perspective. But her wisdom was really, I think it was really essential, and I think it's foreshadowing to something later. But as far as the scene, I think that from the beginning of this episode, when he had a meeting with his counsel and stuff, like he was trying to think of a thread to, get around this, because he knew if the system starts assessing that he's a threat, then he can't do anything from the inside out. But maybe he can conditionally let somebody get something and then go from that route. But I was kind of like, bruh, you just killed that man. And I don't think that Teo was like weighing the odds, like, yeah, he might die from this. I don't think he thought like that. I think he was like, looking at it so like I'm helping them without me really helping them. He didn't look at it like the consequence to that action, which
exactly
later in the next episode. He rationalized the thought. It's like, okay, this result will get us where we need to go. But I ain't gonna lie, like the way my man got taken out, it reminded me of a bad version of what happened to Will Smith in our Robot. When Will Smith was in the car, and the darn robot was like, "Oh, you were having an accident. Hold on." Like that joint was setting him up so bad that I was like, my man was waving. He was like, "Look, I got my hands up. I'm not driving." I'm like, "Can y'all look?" But it goes back to automation. They're not conditioned to look at the circumstances, because who would do something like that? Like, who would actually go and all of a sudden, like, not be driving irate and the car going out of control? Because to me, if I'm in a Tesla right now and that Tesla starts going crazy trying to park, people would believe it. But now these people are conditioned in a way. It's like, no, everything's automated. Nothing should ever happen like this. And so those cops believe somebody that was warning them and pleading with them, begging to them, like, I don't have anything. There's nothing going on. They trust the system that intimately that I don't know how they're gonna really end this, honestly. There has to
Exactly.
be. I don't know, because any kind of evidence they come up with, it's just gonna retain it or corrupt it or change it. I don't know how they stop this, in all honesty. I really don't. And I think that was the way that I got from the end. I knew old dude was gonna die, but when the system got information from him, flagged it off, and it's like, yeah, threat has been neutralized. I was like, oh yeah, nah, bro. They are not gonna win this war.
I think you put it perfectly. Yeah, this is a horrible setup of Will Smith and iRobot when he was on a highway and the car took over, and oh my God, it everything positive we can say about this show, it does something that's just utterly pointless and feels stupid. And this is one of them because you kind of at least throw a wrench in the way Murphy would die. The car taking over, we kind of saw that happening. How about instead of the car taking over, they waited till he got home and something happened? Show the system being smarter than the average sci-fi movie, and it kind of throws you off a little bit that
Right,
it
like
happens
something
that way.
like, the system talking to a trucker like, "Hey, be careful on the back lane because you can't see anything." And then the lights go out, and then there's a truck, like diverting away, and it just hits his car. Something like that would make, I don't know. It is what it is. It's fine.
Exactly. So, sir, your final thoughts on episode 6, Hogan's Alley.
I love Teo's character progression. I mean,
Mhm.
some of the thriller sides of this work really well. I think I love like the flashback with Poet, kind of working through like the process with the team. I thought that was good. But everything else, I think what's really blowing me is that Lennox, Hour, and Poet's storyline are being really just thrown in the trash because of these pseudo relationship. Like, I don't know, like that those relationships don't help their characters, and it makes me detract from caring about any of the three of them. Whereas instead, if they would have just like make pick the person, like this is who the person's gonna be with, and that's it.
Exactly.
Like, because yeah, we'll talk about it next episode. Yeah.
All right, so I think that's the best way to put it. Teo is the key character here, especially in this episode here. I think we're getting to by episode 6 a need to eliminate characters I need to care about. Kind of sounds odd here. I no longer care about Our and Poet's relationship. Just not giving me anything I care about here. Um, you randomly took Murphy away for 3 episodes and then brought him back to kill him. That's a okay. All right, cool. But other than that, they're gonna have to decide eventually in this show. And we're coming to the closing half of these episodes is are we just gonna focus on Teo? Understand the strength here is just to focus on Teo. I don't need anybody else here. So
Yeah.
hopefully that's what we do. But again, you catch this review immediately. It's gonna drop because it's late. It's gonna drop immediately. So check it out. Again, let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about Poet and Ours relationship, their big reveal, the big kiss that we've kind of been waiting for. What do you think about Murphy's death scene? Do you think it is iRobot, false Blade Runner, or Hackers, the old James Cameron joint with Angela Bassett, or maybe even Chain Reaction with Keanu Reeves, because amazingly, that's the first movie that popped into my head, seeing that horrible scene.
It's
Or let us know what you think about Teo and the progression of this character. Him now, as it seems, him no longer trusting a system that he put full trust in, and that's how it began. Again, check us out when it drops. You can check out every Class of 09 review Wednesdays when it drops at midnight by 1 a.m. We're going to try to drop the review. We're going to get back on track here. And you can check us out and let us know what you think in the comment section. Besides Peace People, is there anything else to say? I don't think so.
I'm going to start reviewing Altered Carbon again.
Yeah,
Later, y'all.
So you see the punishment y'all get for this show?
Falling out the top of the moon. I can see skyline.